All right, in this video, I'm gonna be going into detail on how we scaled this teeth whitening brand from $83,000 to $215,000 per month in just 4 months. I'm not gonna leave a single detail out. Gonna break down exactly how we did this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, now that you can see my screen, let's go ahead and dive in. So before working with us, their ad spend was around $39,000 a month and their revenue was around $82,000 a month. So basically at that 2.1x ROAS, which for these guys and their profit margin on their product and everything was actually just around break even. And they were actually going through that roller coaster that a lot of e-com brands experience, where they have profitable months and then unprofitable months, which can be very frustrating and very stressful. And their CAC, or cost per acquisition, was around $48 per customer at the time. Now, after working with us, only 4 short months later, their ad spend went up, not by much actually, to just around $45,000 a month, but their revenue skyrocketed to $214,000 a month, which took them from that 2.1x ROAS to around a 4.7x ROAS. So big improvement there. And we actually dropped their cost per acquisition down significantly, down to only $27 per customer. And some other very, very significant improvements we saw was their customer lifetime value skyrocketed to skyrocketed, and we saw an increase of 1,287%, which I know sounds insane, but it'll make sense how we did that when I explain exactly what we did and what we implemented with these guys. And then their return customer rate also went up by 458%. So overall, some really, really good improvements, and honestly, not that long. I mean, it did take us 4 months, but we got there, which is what is important. Now, before we go ahead and dive in fully into what we actually did and how we did this for these guys, if you're a brand owner looking for a one-to-one custom and completely free meta ads and creative strategy action plan for your brand, then you can get one by booking a call with us below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive in. So the main challenge that these guys were facing before coming with us was these roadblocks that they were running into with their creative strategy and their meta ads. Specifically, they were running into the issue of creative fatigue. So their ads were running out fast. They were strong at launch and then flatlining pretty quickly. Their audience was tuning out of the repeated messaging that they were just hearing over and over, and there wasn't much variety in what they were putting out there. And then they had no system in place to keep creative fresh and effective, which kind of goes back to that previous point, is they just didn't have a system in place to be putting out consistent new angles, new messaging, all those sorts of things. And then the second, also messaging, was their messaging misalignment. So the ads focused way too much on the product and the features and not enough on the actual benefits and why people actually cared about buying the product and why they actually needed it and how it was going to impact their life. The messaging was very generic, didn't stand out, and lacked a clear value proposition. So nothing was really sticking with the audience, and nothing was actually getting them to stand out from their vast amount of competitors out there. I mean, think about how many ads you come across of teeth whitening kits, teeth whitening devices, and all these sorts of things. So there wasn't really anything that was helping them stand out from those competitors. And then thirdly, they were just seeing an inconsistent ROAS, kind of like I had mentioned at the beginning. The ROAS was very unstable, bouncing between 1.8 to 2.3x, which is kind of what I mentioned before, where they were having that roller coaster of profitable months followed by unprofitable months, which is very frustrating and not what you want to see while you're building a business. And then every time they tried to scale spend, their performance dropped, their ROAS went down, which kept them from being able to really scale things up and increase their revenue. And the high CPMs made it worse, driven by the weak creative that just wasn't engaging enough. So those were the core challenges that they were facing. Now, the insight that we came across after digging into their data and all of the analytics that we had was that we saw a pattern with their customers, which is that the users were running out of teeth whitening gel every 4 weeks on repeat like clockwork. And that one insight led us to pivot the entire creative strategy around a subscription model that matched real customer behavior, and also shifted not only the creative strategy, but also their entire business model, basically from being more of like a one-off product and one-off customer type business to transitioning into mainly trying to turn it into a MRR and subscription-based business. So, which is obviously key in e-commerce if you can implement that. And from there, we built new messaging that made the offer feel natural, necessary, and very easy to say yes to. And we kind of did that around 3 core angles, which was, first off, consistency messaging. So we frame the product as a routine habit that you would want to implement into your lifestyle, not just like some one-off thing that you'll do here and there before a big event or a date or whatever else. Because the routine habit and adding it into your daily lifestyle, like brushing your teeth, is what's going to lead to better results over time. The second thing is convenient storytelling. So we highlighted the pain of running out right when you need it. For example, when you're about to go on a date and your teeth look yellower than a banana, not exactly ideal. And if you just ran out of whitening gel and there's nothing you could really do about it, that's definitely pretty painful and not exactly the situation that you want to be in. So highlighting things like that, for example, to show the power of obviously subscribing to their subscription so that you never run into that and you always have enough teeth whitening gel on you. And then third thing is the value-based comparisons. So when it came to actually selling the subscription, really pushing how the clear monetary advantage of subscribing versus just coming back and buying whenever you ran out, because you would overall save money if you subscribed versus just continuously coming back and buying again. So that was kind of the insight and the big shift that we changed with the creative strategy and even their business model approach. Now, when it comes to the actual implementation of the creative strategy, the first thing is the concept development. So first off, what we implemented was a lot of before and after transformation videos. Something nice about their space is that there's a very clear visual aspect to it. So we showed whitening results at 1, 3, and 6 months to make progress very, very visible. And when people saw the real transformation over time, it turns vague promises into proof and hits the emotional brain where the buying decisions obviously happen. Now, the second thing was problem solution stories. So we created relatable scenarios like running out of whitening gel before a date, like I mentioned before, that made the need for a subscription feel very, very obvious. And these moments tap into the anticipated regret and show customers exactly what they want to avoid. It's less of buy this and more of you really don't want this to happen and you don't want to fall into this situation. So, and then the third thing was a lot of educational content, which is extremely important in a space like this. So we use science-backed explainers to show why the consistency really matters for teeth whitening and why it's not a one-off type thing that you can just do here and there to instantly whiten your smile. And then when customers understand how something works, they trust it more, and trust turns interest into conviction, which leads to sales. Now, the next thing was our actual creative testing framework. So first off, we implemented our CentralFlow system to test 5 new creatives every single week because big wins are rare, but you never know which one is going to hit. So consistent testing is the only way to find those 3 to 5x performers that move the needle for the entire campaign and the overall business. And then second, which is probably one of the most important things, is the hook optimization process, because your hook is so important. So we tested different hook styles to see which grabbed attention the fastest and held it. And on social, you've got 1 to 3 seconds to stop the scroll, so the hook makes or breaks the entire ad. And as David Ogilvy said, on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. So when you have written your headline, you have spent 80 cents out of your dollar. And the same goes for running ads on Meta, except in this case, it's not a headline, it is your hook. And every dollar that you spend, 80 cents of it is going to the hook. So it's safe to say that the hook's pretty important to figure out. And then accidentally duplicated that's my bad. But the third thing was format testing strategy. So we tested different creative formats to see what clicked with each individual audience. So different segments trust different styles between like for example, UGC might win with one group while testimonials work better for another, which that goes into like sales tactics and different types of people and all those sorts of things. I'm forgetting the term for it, but if you're in sales, you probably know what I'm talking about. And then matching format to audience boosted the CTR by over 40% with conversions close behind. So that was the actual testing framework. And then lastly was the audience specific creative development. So this is a European teeth whitening brand, and in Europe it's definitely a bit different than in the US. There's a lot of different regions and markets within Europe with a lot of different types of people and religions and cultures and all these sorts of things. So that was really important for us to keep in mind. And the way that we did that was we created market-specific content using native-speaking creators who actually understood the culture in their particular region and area. Now, real localization isn't just translating words. It's capturing the tone, values, and context that make an ad feel authentic in each region. Now, the next thing was demographic tailoring, which is important to any brand, which is We tailored messaging by age and gender because obviously different people care about different things. For example, Gen Z cares about looking confident and wants to attract the opposite gender with their nice, white, fancy smile. And older buyers are focused more on looking polished and professional so they can show up to events and business meetings looking good and not having their teeth look like a banana. But basically, when it comes to that, same product, different angle, and that's what makes it convert better. Now, purchase behavior targeting, we tailor creative to where people were in the buying journey, which is so important. And I feel like so many brands miss this because a first-time visitor doesn't need the same message as a cart abandoner. And another perfect example is somebody who's never ever heard of your brand before is going to need a different message than somebody who's already added multiple of your products to cart and just got busy and didn't end up buying. So very, very important. And by hitting the right objections at the right time, we boosted conversions by over 60% compared to generic retargeting that they were already doing before and that most agencies usually are doing. So that is basically the gist of our creative testing framework and what we did there. And lastly, let's jump into the meta ads implementation strategy and some of the things that we did here, breaking it down by the different funnel stages and where the customers were actually at in the buying journey. So first off, cold traffic. The goal here was to stop the scroll and start the actual journey with the brand. So we used scroll stopping hooks, curiosity driven content, and bold before and afters to grab attention fast while obviously staying within Meta's ridiculous policies and limitations and all that sort of stuff when it comes to before and afters. So gotta be careful there. And cold audiences need to be educated and intrigued before they're sold to. If you immediately try to sell to a cold audience, 9 times out of 10, it ain't gonna work. So by framing whitening as a routine, not a quick fix, kind of like I mentioned earlier, we turned it into a lifestyle upgrade and boosted customer value big time. Now, second is moving on to the warm traffic side, which is where we're nurturing and trying to convert people. So we personalized creatives based on specific site behaviors and handled objections directly. So we tailored the ads to what each person viewed and addressed the exact objections that was most likely stopping them from buying. And warm traffic is already interested. They just need the right message and a little proof to seal the deal and get that sale. And then lastly, we obviously got retargeting. We built cart abandon ads that tackled why people dropped off, digging into the psychology and their latent conditions that might have kept them from not buying, and retention creatives that reminded users of their progress. So the people who had already bought, basically reminding them why they still need to keep paying for the subscription and the progress that they're already seeing, the progress that other customers are seeing, and also showing them what consistent results looks like. For example, what the results look like after using the product for 1 month versus what the results look like after 6 months. So basically making sure that they know they're paying for a subscription for a reason. Because when people see continued value, that's why they stick around and are going to keep paying for that subscription. And then we also added cross-sell ads to boost the AOV and the LTV and reinforce the core offer. So that's pretty much what we did with the meta ads. Now, the results that came from this creative-driven strategy so first off was conversion optimization. We saw a 219% increase in landing page conversion rate. The creative pre-selling warmed up cold audiences and boosted their intent to buy. And then the message alignment that we figured out filtered out low quality clicks and attracted the right buyers who were actually interested in the product. And then clearer value propositions helped the prospects decide faster with less hesitation. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning, we saw a massive ROAS increase from 2.1x, which was them barely breaking even and seeing that roller coaster of profitable months followed by unprofitable months. And we doubled it to we more than doubled it to 4.7x in just those short 4 months. We also increased their CTR by 87% through superior creative that was actually speaking and tackling their target customers' latent conditions and psychological tendencies that was actually getting them interested in the product and showing them why they actually need it and how it was going to affect their life in a positive way. And then we reduced their cost per acquisition by 42%. We maintained performance at a 3x higher ad spend, which actually brings me to the next point, which is we helped them finally achieve scalability by scaling their ad spend by 3x without seeing that performance dip that they were seeing before. And consistent creative refreshes is what kept the fatigue low and the performance high. That helped a lot. And then multivariant testing helped us uncover fresh winners fast. And then lastly, creative diversity allowed us to scale while keeping new audiences engaged. So those were the results. And the key takeaways for why creative comes first that we got from this brand specifically is, first off, insights over assumptions. Real customer behavior is what revealed the subscription angle and completely shifted our approach and their business model, and obviously resulted in some pretty incredible results. And then testing is always, always, always more important than guessing. Our Central Flow system found consistent winners by testing with structure and data, not gut feelings, emotions, and opinions. And then variety leads to longevity. Mixing up angles kept performance high and fatigue low. And then relevance wins every time. So the tailored messaging to where customers were at in the buying journey is what led to those massive increases in CTR that we saw. And then lastly, data over opinions always. Every single creative decision and meta ads decision that we made was made from performance and data, not personal preference or opinions or emotions or anything like that. So those were some of the main takeaways. Hopefully that all made sense, and hopefully you can take some of those points and implement them into your brand. Maybe you thought of some new ideas for approaches that you could take. But with that being said, if you would like to transform your meta ad performance and see results like this, and you'd like a one-to-one custom and completely free meta ads and creative strategy action plan for your brand, you can get one by booking a call with us below. But with that being said, hopefully you gained something from the video. Feel free to subscribe for more stuff like this and check out our newsletter in the description below. But with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. See ya.